So, let's get acquainted. Allow me to introduce the actor Han Nogyeong, who was known for having the most beautiful appearance among actors aged 20 to 30, and who was notorious for his absolute arrogance, not to mention his consistently scandalous behavior even during interviews. He enjoyed abusing his power in his relationships with his fellow actors and completely ignored gifts and attention from fans. Han Nogyeong was an actor who always found himself at the center of public controversy, yet despite this, he was considered irreplaceable due to his beauty. But his fame took a dramatic turn one day with sensational headlines accusing the heartthrob actor of lies and entangling him in an incredible scandal, while his company remained silent and no one seemed willing to explain the incident in which he was evidently implicated. It all escalated to the point where an anti-fan took advantage and attempted to disfigure Han Nogyeong's beauty, throwing enough acid on his face to cause irreversible burns. Everything unfolded as if the heavens themselves had fully endorsed this arrogant actor for his merits, leading to his entire world collapsing within a week. All his fans not only turned away from him but even supported the one who disfigured him, believing he deserved it due to his behavior and attitude towards others. Han Nogyeong himself looked at his face while lying in the hospital bed and now considered himself a real monster, which disgusted him. Nevertheless, he still hoped that his patron, Hyun Jae-hyun, would not leave everything in such a state and would definitely help him. Now, the former actor recalled the words of his friend, who often spoke about trust between them and promised not to ruin their friendship until the end, so that nothing bad would happen. Han Nogyeong, relying on these words from his friend, thought that as long as he was by his side, nothing else mattered much, and all the bad things could be endured with such protection. And when Hyun Jae-hyun visited his friend, he froze, looking at his face, which was disfigured with scars. The patron didn't even approach the actor and friend, who just a week ago was so famous, and after a few minutes of silence, stated that it was all over now and left. The young man silently watched his patron walk away from him in despair, tears of personal despair streaming down his face. When Han Nogyeong's state of shock subsided, he was overwhelmed by a wave of hysteria, and for a while, he both sobbed and laughed out loud. Sometime later, the young man asked himself how he had lived his life, why everyone had turned away from him like this, and came to the conclusion that the saying, "You reap what you sow," especially applied to him. It came to the point where he dared to take the most desperate step, and armed with a sharp tool, he headed to the bathroom to bid farewell to life. In the last minutes of consciousness, he asked forgiveness from his mother for his actions, and also thanked her for giving birth to him as a handsome man. Then he pondered that after his death, the whole world would make a fuss, but still believed that it was better to go this way than to endure humiliation and mockery for the rest of his maimed life. When consciousness left him, he found himself in an unfamiliar place, and soon he even heard his mother's voice. The woman began to inquire how her son had been all this time, and Han Nogyeong could hardly believe that he really saw his long-deceased mother and now sobbed in her embrace. The mother replied to her son that as far as she remembered him, he had always been a crybaby, and now she saw that he still was. But Han Nogyeong finally spoke up and stated that he had a lot to discuss with her. But the woman pointed out that they had no time at all, and she could only convey to him words pleading for him to live this life correctly this time. Then, without listening to any of her son's inquiries, the woman simply pushed him off the cliff into the abyss below. The young man fell downward, and his mother's words echoed to him, emphasizing that she would take away all the bad with her, and he should go where he belongs. The boy's flight ended with him waking up, and Han Nogyeong tried to understand where he was. Because this room didn't resemble hell, and everything around him seemed all too real. He noticed his cosmetics, gifted to him by sponsors, and a poster with his image, which was several years old, and even the arrangement of the furniture he found identical to reality. Han Nogyeong concluded that he was in his room, and then decided to check his wrist, but found no trace of the recent events. The young man thought that perhaps he had truly ended up in hell, and that's why the fresh scar on his wrist disappeared, although otherwise, he couldn't understand or piece together the events. Unable to explain what was happening, he went to the living room, where he encountered his manager, who was just about to prepare himself a bowl of hot noodles. Sanko Hyun sincerely apologized for waking him up, especially since it turned out that the day before, Han Nogyeong had been incredibly angry. The young man asked the manager what he was doing there, but the manager became completely flustered, considering it perhaps a new way of teasing from Han Nogyeong. The manager responded aloud that they had been together recently and reminded him that they had just finished shooting a commercial. Han Nogyeong began to question the boy, wondering if they were shooting another ad today, to which Sanko Hyun nervously noted that the actor was scaring him and asked what was happening to him. The manager reminded him of the advertisement they were currently filming, and Han Nogyeong immediately remembered that he had starred in such a commercial several years ago, and after the acid incident, his entire schedule had been cancelled. At that moment, he remembered his scars on his face and immediately ran to the bathroom to look at himself in the mirror, but couldn't believe his own eyes because his skin was clean and smooth, like a baby's bottom. Sanko Hyun anxiously peeked into the bathroom and asked the actor what was wrong and if he was okay. Han Nogyeong, in response, inquired about today's date, and when the manager, surprised, asked again, he repeated his question, this time in a demanding tone. Finally, the young man heard the date, month, and current year, and he froze slightly. He couldn't fathom how it turned out that the date was from 3 years ago, and then he remembered again that in the advertisement mentioned by the manager, he had indeed filmed 3 years ago. Sanko Hyun saw the actor's condition and again asked what was hurting him, even suggesting going to the hospital. But the young man heard nothing, as he was preoccupied with slowly realizing that he had traveled back in time exactly 3 years. Han Nogyeong asked Sanko Hyun how his face looked, to which the manager replied that it was flawless as always. Then the young man inquired if there were any scars on his face, and the manager remarked in response that he preserved his face like the apple of his eye, reminding him that it was his greatest asset. Sanko Hyun nervously asked the actor if he had accidentally bumped into the corner of the bed in his sleep and began to inspect his face for bruises. And Han Nogyeong couldn't believe that his face was indeed fine, and he was once again convinced that he had returned to the past. After a few minutes, the manager told the actor that he was still concerned about his condition and offered to run to the store to buy porridge. Han Nogyeong continued to ponder the situation and again found himself thinking that he could feel his face burning from burns and blood running from his veins. So he was firmly convinced that even those events couldn't be called a dream. As a result, the young man reached the only logical conclusion that God had given him a second chance. Although he later remembered seeing his mother, who said they had very little time and asked her son to live his life right this time. He went into the closet and looked into the safe, where he found his belongings, including 2 rings given to him by his mother once. She was a shaman, one who took upon herself the misfortunes of others. Han Nogyeong still remembered how his mother performed shamanic rituals, invoking the spirits of the sky and earth as witnesses while taking all the human miseries upon herself. He still didn't know why his mother took the bad luck of other people upon herself, but she suffered all her life and eventually died at a young age. At her mother's funeral, her grandmother informed her grandson that her daughter was born with a cursed fate and was unhappy all her life, although she later speculated that, even in the afterlife, only one pain awaited her. Then the grandmother completely blamed her grandson for all her daughter's sins, and he decided to find out from the woman what her words meant. Then the grandmother told her grandson that his foolish mother had given him the happiness she was supposed to receive after death. The grandmother had an extremely negative attitude towards her grandson and explained her attitude by saying that she shouldn't love the son of her daughter who consumed her happiness. At that time, he didn't understand why his grandmother hated him, but now it seemed to him that he knew the reason. It turned out that his grandmother understood that his mother sacrificed her afterlife happiness to save her child, and it became very bitter for him. He didn't understand what good was in him, which everyone abandoned and who was going to settle scores with life. So, crying, he began to ask for forgiveness from his mother. Feeling somewhat reassured, he straightened up and thanked his mother for this chance, then promised her that this time he would live righteously and wouldn't let slip away the opportunity she had given him. Sanko Hyun returned from the store and announced that he had bought delicious porridge, which only needed to be reheated, although he again suggested to the actor to go to the hospital just in case. Han Nogyeong silently stared at him, lost in thought, while the young man tried to figure out if his friend was still unwell. The actor remembered how this young man reproached him in that other life for what he did to someone and how he mocked him. Sanko Hyun couldn't reconcile himself with the fact that Han Nogyeong had caused the man's death by spreading terrible rumors about him. In response, the protagonist reproached his manager for personally instigating him to do it and for creating the whole mess. As a result, Sanko Hyun admitted that he wasn't sure he could continue working with him, and after this incident, couldn't look him in the eye calmly. So he then announced that he was quitting his manager's job and eventually left him. Han Nogyeong decided to apologize to the young man, but he was surprised and bewildered at the same time, asking in response where suddenly he hears such words. The actor replied to the manager that lately he had been very rude to him and apologized to the young man for his rude behavior, not forgetting to thank him for everything he had done for him. Sanko Hyun was completely puzzled because he decidedly didn't understand what was happening with this person and even suspected that he had eaten something wrong. He again clarified with the actor if he wasn't feeling well and even suggested taking a fever reducer, but in response heard about the hot noodles he had eaten the day before. The manager became concerned and informed him that he had washed the dishes and lit scented candles to eliminate all food odors. At first, the actor didn't understand what was being talked about, but then remembered how in his past life he reproached his friend for the smell of food he created nearby and not very kindly asked him to eat outside. Han Nogyeong assured the manager that everything was fine and he didn't need to worry about it anymore, then shocked the young man again by saying that he was very hungry. When the main character went to the kitchen, he found all the shelves empty and suggested to the manager to order sushi. Sanko Hyun approached to feel the actor's forehead, trying to understand if he had a fever, but the young man anticipated him and replied that his temperature was normal and he just wanted to eat. The manager was additionally astonished to hear the suggestion of having crispy chicken or pizza, or even pork feet, but eventually settled on a sushi set. Han Nogyeong volunteered to bring the tableware and offered the manager to sit down, while he himself expressed how hungry he was, and expressed his desire to arrange the delivery faster. Sanko Hyun couldn't resist and started asking the actor what had happened to him and why he suddenly asked for forgiveness and ordered sushi at such an hour, reminding him that he used to skip dinner every day. Han Nogyeong honestly replied that he really wanted to eat and reminded that he was already skinny, so a small snack wouldn't hurt him. The manager confirmed to the actor that he was indeed very skinny and emphasized that it was necessary for his profession, although he later expressed his opinion about the extreme thinness. The actor also heard his friend's opinion about the need to eat and build his body through exercises because when a person is only skin and bones, it's painful to look at them. At some point, the manager became concerned by his conversation partner's silent reaction, but the latter cheerfully promised to eat well and engage in sports because he had decided to live differently now. When the food was delivered and the actor saw the set of dishes, he remembered dining once with his benefactor and how they enjoyed sushi. But back then, he did it only because Hyun Jae-hyun liked it. At that time, he convinced himself that he could eat everything, but then he would have to go to the bathroom and return the food. Now, recalling that situation, he immediately felt nauseous and confessed to the manager that he couldn't eat sushi because he felt terrible discomfort in his stomach. Sanko Hyun was deeply concerned about the actor's condition and offered him to eat at least porridge or take a fever reducer, but he refused. He went to his room and began to think again about how he had come to such a state, that Sanko Hyun had left his position and walked away from him. He also remembered the person who betrayed him, but whom he trusted, although he shouldn't have. Han Nogyeong realized one thing. He no longer wanted to go through something like this again, and promised himself that he wouldn't let such a life repeat itself because he didn't want to live like that again for anything. The next day, he headed to the gym to improve his physical condition, pondering how he could identify the perpetrator's identity and prevent the acid incident. He wanted to understand who the offender could be, especially since he remembered that the culprit was never found back then. The protagonist now feared the consequences if he failed to catch the culprit in this life. He convinced himself that everything would be fine and that he just needed to make an effort to prevent this incident. When Han Nogyeong took a step, he accidentally twisted his foot and nearly fell, but he was helped to stay on his feet by a person whose encounter was extremely unexpected for the actor. Kang Junil was the head of the country's leading entertainment company, and also the most precious grandson of the company's honorary president and founder of the corporation. This individual was the perfect candidate for the position of the company's new president, and moreover, He had the reputation of being a member of the family among the top 3 wealthiest individuals, now in the 3rd generation. Hyun Jae-hyun once instructed the actor to befriend Kang Junil for sponsorship, and now this person, with a sense of entitlement, was pointing out his place to him and accusing him of being someone who seemed saintly on the outside but was rotten inside. Han Nogyeong could now only conclude that he had already approached this person to establish contacts, but it probably ended in failure. As a result, the actor had to insist that Kang Junil had misunderstood the situation and explained to his interlocutor that he had come here solely to engage in sports. Kang Junil laughed out loud and emphasized that as far as he knew him, there was no way he would come to the gym, especially at this time, and asked him to come up with something more believable. Han Nogyeong, no longer satisfied, replied that he indeed came here to exercise and emphasized that their meeting was just a coincidence, although Kang Junil, as before, had little trust in the actor's words. As a result, the interlocutor shouted at Han Nogyeong, saying that if he came here for sponsorship, then he should behave like someone who needs it, and asked what tricks he planned to play with him and what promises his patron made to him. The actor concluded that this person wasn't even going to listen to him, so he decided to put him in his place with a simple and straightforward explanation. Han Nogyeong explained to the man that he goes where he wants and meets with whom he wants, and he doesn't need advice from others for that. Then the actor brought up the sponsorship issue and stated that he didn't need it either because he would try to handle these aspects himself, and asked Kang Junil not to make any further claims on these matters. The young man summed up his words with the earlier phrase that their meeting was simply a misunderstanding and didn't involve any sinister plans. Han Nogyeong showed his thin arms to his interlocutor and explained that he was indeed here to gain muscle mass because due to his significant weight loss, his endurance had decreased to a minimum. That concluded the conversation between the two, and the actor even bowed, bidding farewell to Kang Junil. Then Han Nogyeong decided it was necessary to clarify further to eliminate any misunderstandings. He returned to say that he actually appreciated the fact that he was viewed with disdain because he had no desire to befriend him, let alone engage in sponsorship dealings. The main character was about to leave for the 2nd time but still wanted to say something before departing, considering the 3 years they had spent together. However, at the same time he felt a terrible sense of discomfort. As a result, he asked Kang Junil not to overdo it with alcohol in the future, which left the interlocutor once again stunned. He remained for some time trying to understand what had just happened, while the actor disappeared from his sight. It was because under the influence of alcohol, he had been portrayed unfavorably by the media, leading to a scandal in the past. Now, the young man only looked back on the situation and didn't even consider that it could have turned out this way. Han Nogyeong understood that he was in a precarious situation when he received orders from Jang Hyun-jae, especially considering that he was already an A-list star at that time, but not everyone knew him yet. The rating of the drama series he was starring in at the time was only 3%, and he felt a bit anxious that he might end up at this level, especially since the viewership of the movie in which he had the lead role didn't even reach the 1 million mark. Furthermore, at that time, amidst Jang Hyun-jae's orders, he fell into depression and failed several auditions, greatly frustrating those around him. After the acid incident, Kang Junil showed concern and even visited him, to which the young man only smiled and asked if he had come to see his burnt face. Kang Junil remained silent for a while, then left, bidding farewell with a promise that when everything settled down, he would visit him again. It's worth noting that he was the only person who came to his room and expressed any concern and sympathy, whereas it should be noted that the scandal surrounding this person happened because of him, albeit under the orders of another person. Kang Junil could have easily buried him, but he chose not to. After the training session, the young man returned home and asked the manager to feed him with any food available, which even bewildered the manager due to such an unusual request from the actor. Sanko Hyun started by making a smoothie with apples and a couple of other fruits, informing the actor about it, knowing his pickiness with food. Surprisingly, the actor didn't inquire much and sincerely thanked him in response, then offered to stock the empty fridge with groceries. When the manager mentioned that there were chicken breasts in the fridge, the protagonist replied that they would soon start haunting him. He had only eaten them before to stay lean and meet standards, but that was in the past. Sanko Hyun concernedly asked his friend if he was aware that he seemed strange since yesterday. When the actor inquired about what exactly was strange, the manager replied that, at the very least, he would have used some harsh words regarding the chicken breasts, implying a simple request to throw them in the trash. Han Nogyeong chuckled and replied that he probably just didn't have the energy left for cursing. At that moment, the young man pondered that perhaps he could free himself from Jang Hyunjae's intermediation if he started thinking for himself and making his own decisions, as he did now. He asked the manager if there were any script proposals for him that had come in recently and requested to bring everything available. Now, he was determined to be the first to select the piece that would lead him to success. The manager, intrigued, asked the actor why he wanted to do this, and the young man responded by asking if he had never received any scripts. Sang Ko-hyun told the actor that his popularity had actually increased lately, and there was already a whole bunch of such proposals. The protagonist asked the interlocutor what was bothering him, and the young man confessed honestly that he was indeed troubled because he had never chosen a script for himself and usually only agreed to what his patron told him to take. Han Nogyeong immediately recalled how Jang Hyunjae insisted that he would choose a suitable script for him himself and asked him to trust blindly in what he was doing. The protagonist replied to the manager that he wanted to learn to choose his own scripts, and this was only possible when he started to review them. From that moment on, the actor announced that he would study the proposals himself and choose what he personally liked. The manager remained in wonder, though admitting it was quite a good idea, but still doubted his friend's resolve. When he realized that the actor was not joking, he hurried for the scripts, saying that the actor's life was just beginning. Finally, Han Nogyeong learned that at the moment he had been sent 10 scripts for consideration, which included 2 movies and 8 series. The protagonist immediately paid attention to the script titled Fugitive, and was even surprised that he was invited to a role in this series. Fugitive was a detective multi-series film that garnered numerous awards and received the highest viewer ratings. Han Nogyeong knew that this series aired simultaneously with the one he starred in, but Fugitive took all the views and sympathies for itself. The young man asked the manager what role was offered to him in this series and learned that he was prepared for the role of Cha Do-yeon. Currently, Han Nogyeong was thinking that he was offered the role of a detective, who, although not the main character, still played a significant role in the series' plot. His role itself involved behaving recklessly throughout the course of events until his life was at stake, and then he had to help the main character, who had been wrongly accused, thus generating great interest in this character among the audience. He also knew that the character he was offered to play was considered a womanizer, but after a plot twist, it turned out that he was deeply in love with the main heroine, which led to even greater popularity among viewers. Now he decided to take on the role of this character, as he informed the manager. Sang Ko-hyun reminded his friend that it was a supporting role and was very surprised when the actor agreed to play it anyway. Han Nogyeong explained his decision by his desire to transform into someone else. Moreover, he wanted to demonstrate his acting skills to the fullest extent possible, rather than relying solely on his appearance, as he also told the astonished manager. Of course, he was grateful for his appearance, which helped him gain fame during the advertisement of women's cosmetics. By the way, it was his debut and it was quite successful. But after that, there was a wave of audience comments about Han Nogyeong's lack of acting skills. So he realized that he needed to somehow improve his image in the acting field. Sang Ko-hyun reminded his interlocutor that his character would be very different from those he had played before, as it would include action scenes, a rough style, and overall complex acting. Han Nogyeong replied that he simply needed to practice more diligently and also take courses in action, and then everything would work out. The manager handed the actor another script, saying that his patron was planning to take this work as his next role. Han Nogyeong saw the script titled You're Sweet, where he indeed had the leading role, and remembered how this series was broadcast simultaneously with Fugitive and received a lot of negative reviews. The young man did not want to repeat the same mistake again, especially since he knew how much the rating of You're Sweet would drop against Fugitive. The manager could hardly believe his ears until the end and again asked if he was going to go against his patron. Han Nogyeong asked his friend to immediately call the company and inform them that he was ready to take on the role of Cha Do-yeon, fearing that someone else might outdo him. The actor was most afraid that his patron was already discussing a contract with the production team of You're Sweet, and probably could have rejected the Fugitive offer. Han Nogyeong began to get upset about why the company did not ask for his opinion on such important matters at all. And suddenly he came up with the idea to directly contact the author of the work, which he told the manager, but he replied that he did not have such authority. Han Nogyeong began to ask the guy to get the author's number at any cost, arguing that he needed the role in Fugitive. Sanko Hyun was impressed that the actor turned to him for help, something that had never happened before, and he agreed to get the author's number. Han Nogyeong was very nervous while his manager unsuccessfully dialed various numbers, and he even managed to skim through the first 4 episodes of the plot, which genuinely interested him. While he pondered how to secure the role offered to him in this plot, his manager finally reached the right person and obtained the necessary contact. The actor personally hurried to dial the author's number and introduced himself to the person on the other side of the screen. The girl was completely confused and even asked if she understood correctly who was talking to her. The manager was even more astonished because he saw the actor's face and heard his voice, which he only used when he needed to look good and achieve a goal. The actor finally convinced his interlocutor that it was indeed him calling her, and explained that he was calling about the role of Cha Do-yeon in the series Fugitive. But suddenly he heard an answer he didn't expect at all. He learned that after his refusal, another actor agreed to this role, and therefore soon a contract would be signed with that man. The girl hurried to the restaurant for the meeting and informed the receptionist that she had come for the meeting booked by Sanko Hyun, and the staff agreed to escort her to a separate booth. When the guest entered the private room, she saw Han Nogyeong and his manager there. The girl was completely speechless because she did not expect such a meeting and began to apologize for her rudeness, and then finally introduced herself as the author of the work Fugitive. They sat down at the table and decided to place their orders, and Han Nogyeong noticed for himself that the girl arrived 2 minutes earlier than promised, and was pleased that he left home earlier himself and now was not late. In his new life, he was not going to behave arrogantly and wanted to be punctual, and also asked himself to always come to meetings on time. Han Nogyeong started the conversation by expressing to Kim Hung-gyeon his desire to play the role of Cha Do-yeon in the upcoming series. The girl honestly replied that he was the prototype for creating this character, and she really wanted him to play this character. The actor expressed his regret that the company rejected their proposal even before he had a chance to review this script, and then added that when he read it himself, he realized that this role suited him perfectly. He emphasized that he really wanted to get it and then inquired if anything could be changed at this stage of role coordination. Han Nogyeong caught himself feeling more nervous now than when attending auditions. Kim Hung-gyeon sincerely replied that she really wanted the role of Cha Do-yeon to go to him, but then she noted that such decisions are actually made by more than one person. The actor understood that everything needed to be discussed with the production company. Still, he emphasized that her opinion should be valued most in the discussion, and as the primary creator of the work, her voice should be decisive in this matter. The author looked at the actor and asked him directly, expecting an honest answer, if he really wanted to play Cha Do-yeon. The boy sincerely replied that he fell in love with this character as soon as he read the script, to which the girl responded by noting that Cha Do-yeon is not even the main role. Han Nogyeong admitted that, of course, he prefers leading roles, but in this case, he had to agree that he saw himself in the role of Cha Do-yeon, even if it's a supporting one. Kim Hung-gyeon was extremely surprised, and the actor added that he also knows that Fugitive is her second work. The boy emphasized that her books are real masterpieces, and in his eyes, she is a brilliant author. The girl replied that she's not actually a genius, just a passionate fan of detectives, and began to explain in detail how she defined the character of Cha Do-yeon. Kim Hung-gyeon informed Han Nogyeong that they planned to start filming the series next month and asked if he would be able to prepare by then. The actor glanced inquisitively at his manager, who nodded firmly, after which he also gave the girl a positive answer. Kim Hung-gyeon reminded her interlocutor that his role involves many action scenes and asked if he agrees with that, fearing possible injuries he might sustain. The actor replied that he has been on a strict diet for a long time but is now planning to build muscles and also learn action, so he should be able to handle everything. Kim Hung-gyeon honestly confessed to the actor that when she was planning to invite him to the casting, the production company reacted to this idea with dissatisfaction because they didn't like his character. The main character thought that he had indeed been a bit fiery in the past, so he decided not to comment on this remark. Then he thought it would be better to admit his mistake and attract even more sympathy from the person. As a result, Han Nogyeong announced that he is indeed a bit sensitive and rough, after which he remarked that perhaps that's why he is suitable for the role of Cha Do-yeon. Kim Hung-gyeon apologized for the need to make a call she wanted to make to the company, and she went to discuss the role. Sang Ko-hyun praised the actor for his excellent patience, and then admitted that this writer is a newcomer to the field and has almost no experience. The manager was also surprised by the actor's behavior because he never agreed to a role immediately, usually flipping the table upside down and storming out of the meeting. Han Nogyeong replied to Sang Ko-hyun that he wasn't going to do anything like that. He added that, if necessary, he was even willing to beg for the role on his knees. The manager no longer believed his ears and finally told the actor that if he probably saw some future or, more likely, he died and was resurrected anew. Han Nogyeong jokingly responded to the request not to read so much literature. Otherwise, at this rate, they might end up in another world. Sang Ko-hyun still found everything too suspicious, which he openly expressed to his interlocutor. And the next second, the author returned to the room and announced that she managed to stop the signing of the contract. Han Nogyeong couldn't believe his ears, and the girl continued to confess that now she felt uncomfortable in front of the other actor. But he hadn't signed the contract yet, so it made her task easier. She also added that tomorrow they would receive a renewed offer from the company, and she emphasized that she insisted on it, trusting him. So she warned that under no circumstances should this contract be rejected. Han Nogyeong sincerely thanked the girl for such a gift and promised that he would not change his decision for anything. Kim Hung-gyeon confessed that she had heard about his plans to appear in another series prepared by a more experienced and popular writer, and she admitted that she still couldn't believe that an actor of his caliber rejected that job for her fugitive. Han Nogyeong informed the girl that he was familiar with that plot but was particularly impressed by her work, after which he asked to keep this confession a secret. Kim Hung-gyeon promised the actor not to disappoint his character and expressed hope that her work would become the best. The boy let slip that he actually knew about it, which surprised the girl, but then he corrected himself by saying that he simply believed in her. After some time, Han Nogyeong decided to step away to the restroom because he had drunk too much water due to excitement. While walking and reproaching himself for this action, he didn't notice he bumped into someone. He started apologizing for the accidental collision, but his encounter turned out to be none other than Kang Junil, although the boy had no idea what this person was doing there at all. Han Nogyeong hurried to tell Kang Junil that it was another misunderstanding, and they met accidentally again, even swearing to it. The actor decided to explain that he came here for a meeting with the writer regarding their next project and even offered the young man to come to their room and personally see that he was telling the truth. In response, Kang Junil asked who was even asking him about something and reminded the actor that he hadn't said a word to him. Han Nogyeong pointed out that he was afraid Kang Junil might misunderstand him, to which Kang Junil replied that he hadn't even tried to understand the situation at all. Just when the actor thought everything was settled, Kang Junil emphasized that he didn't understand what was happening at all. Han Nogyeong was puzzled, trying to understand how this person perceived situations at all, and even angrily pondered whether it was not possible to express one's opinion clearly and not confuse it. When Kang Junil left the restroom with a smile, Han Nogyeong wondered to himself how they constantly ran into each other. He remembered that when he was looking for this person on his patron's orders back then, he couldn't find him anywhere, and in this life, he hadn't even lived for a few days yet, but had already encountered him twice. The young man reassured himself with the thought that Kang Junil seemed to be a very busy person, so they would probably not see each other again. The actor returned to his company, and they began discussing the delicious food offered to them at the establishment. When their meeting ended, Han Nogyeong apologized to the girl for keeping her waiting for so long, but she didn't mind the meeting at all. Kim Hung-gyeon even thanked the actor for the invitation, especially for his accurate understanding of the character she had offered him to play. A rather friendly atmosphere developed between them, and they continued enthusiastically discussing the role of Cha Do-yeon, even on the street. At this point, the actor asked the girl where she lived, offering to give her a ride home, which left the manager stunned. In response, the girl said she would take a taxi, so there was no need to worry about her. but Han Nogyeong insisted, understanding how much of her time she had spent on him, while the manager continued to wonder where the real actor named Han Nogyeong had disappeared to. Han Nogyeong and Kim Hung-gyeon discussed the neighborhoods they lived in and the distances they would have to travel, while the manager quietly observed what was happening and marveled at something still unknown to him. Finally, the dialogue was interrupted by the actor's request to his manager to give the writer a ride home. Sang Ko-hyun asked Han Nogyeong how he planned to get to his apartment in such a situation. Before the actor could even say he would take a taxi, he heard a voice saying that he would personally drive him home. The group of conversationalists turned to Kang Junil, who announced that since there had been an argument over the same issue in front of his car before, he would help resolve it by giving Han Nogyeong a ride in his car. Without much thought, he seated the actor in the front seat and took the wheel himself, not even allowing his friends to discuss this moment. As a result, Sang Ko-hyun and Kim Hung-gyeon were left stunned, watching the car drive away with Han Nogyeong. On the way, Kang Junil asked the young man to fasten his seatbelt, and just then the phone rang with the manager on the line. The young man anxiously asked the actor what had happened, to which Han Nogyeong replied that he himself didn't understand anything, then asked to have the writer taken home and to discuss everything during the meeting, after which he hung up. Kang Junil, in turn, asked his companion to speak if he had something to say to him rather than just staring at him, referring to it as an unpleasant feeling. The actor then dared to ask the driver why he had decided to drive him, admitting that he couldn't understand his actions. Kang Junil replied that 3 people blocked his way, arguing with each other, so he dared to intervene in this way. The actor responded that they could have simply asked the 3 of them to move out of the way, and he heard in response a suggestion to consider his act as an act of kindness, since they all live in the same neighborhood, and therefore they would all be going in the same direction. When Han Nogyeong clarified whether he lived nearby his house, the man directly asked whether he really didn't know this information or was just pretending to be ignorant. The young man replied with a counter-question, asking how he would know where he lived. Then the man with a hint of accusation remarked that not just 1 or 2 people were after him under his sponsorship, and each of these hunters sought any information about him. Kang Junil noted that such people didn't hesitate to find out even the most personal information, let alone the place of residence. At that moment, Han Nogyeong remembered how his patron ordered him to do everything possible to get closer to this person and get sponsorship, so now he felt uncomfortable. Kang Junil again asked the actor if he knew his address or not, to which Han Nogyeong replied to his interlocutor that he probably accused him of hiding the truth, then admitted that he really didn't know his address. Then Kang Junil emphasized that if he ever dared to get close to someone for sponsorship in the future, he must be honest with the person. He expressed his surprise that Han Nogyeong intended to approach him for personal gain, having very little information at hand, and overall called him insincere. In response, Han Nogyeong confessed that he was glad about this conversation that took place between them because now everything had fallen into place. He then added that his words were related to internal changes that had recently occurred within him. The actor confessed to the man that he had never had a sponsor, but he was willing to get one if ordered to do so. He emphasized that he had such thinking until he realized that he actually wanted to become a real star through his own efforts. Therefore, he would refuse any kind of sponsorship no matter what.